welcome to Divisionalysis. I'm Fog. Today I am rebooting one of the oldest exotics in the game. Is it best in slot? Are you building correctly for it? It's time to take a look at the Coyote's Mask. Let's go. As I said, Coyote's Mask, it's been around the longest. One of the first exotics to be released into the game. It's standard gear piece, except for its talent. Pack Instincts. You and all allies gain a bonus based on the distance of the last enemy you hit. 0 to 15, we get 25% crit damage. 15 to 25, 10% crit damage and 10% crit chance. And 25 meters plus, it is 25% crit chance. Take the mask to the range. You will notice the orange will tell you the last hit and the blue is the kept bonus, and you can see that the white arrow is on the lower portion, meaning that we have the close range bonus. At 15 to 25 meters, orange symbol for the hit, and you can see that the white portion is shared between the two arrows, meaning that we have the mid-range bonus. Take it out a bit further and you can see changing from mid-range to the long-range bonus, white arrow on top, based on the last enemy that you hit. So that is an important point to remember, because right now I have the long-range bonus hitting a close-range target. I now have the close-range bonus hitting a long-range target. So if you'd seen my last video on optimal range, you would know that I've put a lot of research hours in. And during those hours, I've spent logging the engagement distances for different enemies across all the missions. Now, excluding the two outliers being Lincoln Memorial and Camp White Oak, a very distinctive pattern emerges. And across all of those missions, when combined, these are the percentages for each of the engagement distances. And that allows us to know how often each of the buffs for the Coyote's Mask, how often they're going to be active when we're playing missions. That works out to be 25.5% of the time. It's going to be 0 to 15. 36, 16 to 25, and 38.5% of the time it's going to be greater than 25 meters. And that allows us to quantify exactly how much benefit each one of those buffs is going to provide us. So the mission average is as stated. And we've got those couple of outliers as well. You could think of Lincoln as also the other missions, but you're much more aggressive than what I possibly play. 49% 0 to 15, 27% at 16 to 25, and 24% at 25 meters or greater. And for Camp White Oak, it's a bit of a flip around. Only 19% of the time are they close, 21% mid-range, and 60% we're engaging them at greater than 25 meters. When you're building for the Coyotes, how do you build? This is my test build, and if you're wondering why I'm using such a ridiculous build, then you'll have to go back to my previous videos to work that out. But what I did do is for 3-slot weapons, I set it up so that a 3-slot weapon can be at 60% crit chance and 141% crit damage, with only 2 crit chance mod slots. We change and we equip the Coyote's Mask. See 60% still, and I'm going to add back in crit damage mod. Now RNG's this has not been kind to me with crit damage mods, and I have a total of 2 across 4 characters. So we're going to pretend like they are 12%, but we're at 60% crit chance and 141% crit damage. So that's one way of building for the Coyote's Mask. Another way, I have a 6% crit chance mod on my chest piece, so I can exchange that for a crit damage mod. It's 12%. And that takes us to 54% crit chance and 153%, so another way to build. What other options do we have now? I have the Cheska piece, so I can exchange that for Grupo instead. And now that takes us to 44% crit chance and 168% crit damage. And then I can go back to my chest piece and swap out the crit damage mod back for the crit chance mod. And now we sit at 50% crit chance and 156% crit damage. 4 unique ways to build for the Coyote's mask. But we have another option, which is to say, I'm just going all high end. Screw the Coyote's mask, I want consistent damage all the time. No variations, and now I can change back to Cheska and put crit damage back on. And now the stats stand at 60% crit chance and 156% crit damage now. So 5 unique ways to build. So the 3 slot weapon build options, we've got a few available to us. The 60% 141 crit damage, 54% crit chance, 153 crit damage, 50 156, 44 168, and then we can also take the option of having no Coyotes at all and just replace it with a Grupo piece. And that would give us an extra 15%, being 60% crit chance and 156. So, any one of those similar to what you're running right now? Well, let's see what happens. At 0 to 15 meters, we get 0% crit chance bonus and 25% crit damage from the Coyotes. At 16 to 25, it's 10 and 10, and at greater than 25 meters, we get a 25% crit chance bonus with no crit damage addition. So that turns our 6141 build into a 6166 at 0 to 15, 6151 at 16 to 25, because we've now reached or at the crit chance cap and can't go over 60%, and it remains at 60, and we go back to 141, essentially getting no benefit at greater than 25 meters at a 6141 build. Same for the 54 153, except now we are gaining crit chance at 16 to 25 meters, and we're also gaining crit chance at greater than 25 meters, taking us up to the cap in both of those situations. As we get lower, the benefit at greater distances increases. And all the way down the bottom, the no Coyotes remains consistent across all ranges because we are just getting 15% crit damage from Grupo instead of using the Coyote's mask. So what we need to do is convert that into a crit damage across every bullet. So essentially it's 60% of the time we're going to receive 166 crit damage. So what that works out to be is that across each bullet we're going to get these numbers added to our crit damage, and that is the same calculation across both of those other engagement distant ranges. So if we were to spend 100% of the time at 0 to 15 meters range, our 6141 build would receive an average of 99.6% crit damage bonus. But we don't spend 100% of the time at 0 to 15 meters. So we now need to introduce the percentages for our engagement ranges to work out what the average addition to each bullet would be. So at 25.5% being 0 to 15 meters, we convert that from our 100% figures down to the reduced amount, and we do the same for the other ranges, and this is what it works out to be. What that means is that our results are as such. If you have a 60-141 build, you are going to add an average across the mission of 90.59% crit damage. But as you can see, there are better ways to do things. What you'll notice though is that 54, 153, a 50% crit chance and 156 crit damage, and a 44% crit chance and a 168 crit damage essentially produce very, very similar results. So good news is you haven't been making any mistakes if you're in that range. And even the no coyotes and just Grupo doesn't fall that far behind. But what about if you're a little bit more aggressive than what you think I am? Lincoln Memorial is probably a good example, where you are spending 49% of your time up close and personal with the enemy, 27% at mid-range, and 24% at greater than 25 meters. The thing about this game is that regardless of how aggressive you are, there are times where you are forced to engage at greater than 25 meters. But what happens now? How does this change things? So now we do the same calculations, averaging it out per bullet. The end result being that even now, it's still incorrect to build at 60% crit chance. The best build for an aggressive playstyle is 54% crit chance with 153% crit damage, followed closely by a 50% crit chance 156. And that is almost on par with going without coyotes at all. 93.6 being the result for just a Grupo piece and consistent damage numbers across all of those ranges. What about if we are forced to engage at longer distances? Well, now only 19% are up close and 60% Camp White Oak. Engagements occur outside of 25 meters. Of course, you can change your playstyle, cover some ground, but it's wide open spaces and they spawn very long distance away from you. How does that change things? And what we see now is that a 44 168 build edges out the other builds, but again, not by much. A 51 56 build still nets you 94.28 crit damage, but remembering that is across every single bullet, so 2.52% crit damage across every single bullet. It does add up. But how often are you going to replay Camp White Oak? So let's move to 4-slot weapon builds now. So in my assault rifles compared video, I showed you how to change from a 3-slot to a 4-slot build most optimally, and that is to remove a 6% crit chance mod from your gear, replacing that with a crit damage mod, and then on the weapon system replacing or using the spare or the extra weapon slot, replacing that with 5% crit chance, and that puts us at 59% crit chance and 153% crit damage. A more optimal setup than 60-141. So we have 59-153. Now, the problem is that we have very limited other options. Every single gear piece is now set to crit damage. We have no more room to maneuver on our mods. After we equip the Coyote's mask, we're at 59-153, and the only option remaining to us is to remove the Sheska piece and replace that with a Grupo piece. And we're now at 49% crit chance and 168% crit damage. And then, as before, we can go back and we can readjust with crit chance instead of crit damage, and we have 55-156. There is the final option, which is to get rid of Coyote's mask altogether, effectively just replacing that with a Grupo piece. So we now have all high end, and when all is said and done, we now have stats that sit at 59% crit chance and 168% crit damage. So the 4-slot builds, slightly less options. We have 59, 153, 55, 156, 49, 168, and then the high-end only build. Our percentages or averages of engagement distances, and then we have, with Coyote's buffs, what each of those builds look like. We then average that out per bullet, and then we multiply that by the number of engagements, or the percentage engagements. And the result, a 49, 168 build is the clear winner, edging out the high-end only build, and as you can see, over-speccing into crit chance with either the 55 or the 59% option being the least desirable, and actually resulting in 3.5% behind the 49 168 build, and almost a full 2% behind not using Coyotes at all. What about if you're more aggressive, or much more aggressive? Same calculations, and now we see that effectively the results are fairly uniform, with the best being a high crit chance build, obviously trying to take advantage or maximum advantage of the full 25% crit damage that's offered at close range. But as you can see, once again, that no Coyotes is very close behind. But if we're at long range, then a very clear winner being the 49 168. But again, the no Coyotes, it's holding its own and very respectful. In the wash-up, with a 3-slot weapon, you can get away. You can be pretty much okay with anything between 44 and 54% crit chance, however you choose to build, and be pretty okay across most missions. With the 4-slot build, it was very clear that a 49% crit chance was going to give you the best overall results, with the second being no Coyotes at all. And possibly the most surprising fact being that what many people might consider to be the sweet spot at 55% crit chance actually consistently produced the worst results for a 4-slot weapon build. But Coyote's talent is pack instincts. And for solo play, is it best in slot? Well, barely, just barely best in slot. But where Coyotes really shines is in team play. So let's say that you're running a support build in the team and one of your mates has decided to put on Coyotes. You are currently shooting at a 10% crit chance and 45% crit damage. And when your mate shoots a target between 0 and 15 meters, your build goes up to a 1070. When he shoots 16 to 25 meters, it's 2055, 35, 45 at greater than 25 meters. Now, what does that mean for you? Well, at 0 to 15 meters, 16, 25, greater than 25. We've seen these calculations before. And the end result, before you were shooting with a massive average crit damage per bullet of 4.5%. And now, with your mate's buff, you now jump to 11.81% crit damage averaged across every single bullet. Now that might not seem like a lot, but it's actually massive. If you think about it, 11.81% at a 10% crit chance average, in order to achieve those results on your own without your mate, you would have to increase your crit damage to 118%. You've received an effective buff of 70% crit damage to that build. What happens if 2 of your mates are running Coyotes? Well, I've heard it before that I'm not going to run Coyotes because you're running Coyotes and therefore the buffs are going to cancel out. And it's true, yes, there is overlap at 6.5% for close range, 13% for mid-range and 14.8% at long range, where both of your mates are shooting a target at essentially the same distance. But what that means is that you're still getting an uptime on each one of those buffs of 44.5% of the time, 59% of the time for the mid-range, and 62.2% of the time for the long range. And if you do the calculations, that works out to be 19.41%. It's a good guide, but that's not correct, because those percentages imply that 3 buffs could potentially be active at any one time, which is not how it works. The correct way is to actually work it all out, and you will get a single buff. So you're going to that single buff, essentially equivalent to having only 1 Coyote's buff, 6.5% of the time at close range, 13% mid-range, and 14.8% at long range. But then the rest of the time that talents are active, you are getting 2 buffs. You're getting the close and mid-range 18.4% of the time, the mid and long range 27.7% of the time, and you are getting the close and the long range 19.6% of the time. And when you multiply all of that out, without the buff, so no Coyotes active, you were at 4.5% average crit damage per bullet. With 1, you were at 11.81, and with 2, you are at 16.93%. So we received a 7.3% jump for 1 Coyotes, and we're now getting a 5.1% jump for 2 Coyotes. So there is diminishing returns, but again, to put that in perspective, that jump of 5.1%, for you to do that without any Coyotes is again the equivalent of you having to add an additional 50% crit damage to your build. So what that works out to, in rough terms, is your 2 mates, by just running Coyotes, have essentially given you the equivalent of the flatline talent and killer being active on your build 100% of the time. Coyotes is a team build bonus. The biggest limiting factor to Coyotes and its bonuses is crit chance cap. As you approach the crit chance cap, the returns are diminished. So if you're in a completely red build team, there will still be benefit for sure using a mask that is, as we've already established, best in slot, even though it's only just. The additional bonuses that you add to your team is essentially free money. But as an example, if this build had been at the crit cap, the overall benefit would have been more than halved. When you are playing in a team and there are Coyote masks running, you can comfortably drop your crit chance and know that you are going to output more damage. I'm not going to go into specific builds, I'm not going to go into 3 Coyote masks, this video has already gone on long enough. Bottom line, whatever you're running, if you're running Coyote masks, somewhere around the 50% crit chance mark is going to be the sweet spot. If you're running with randoms and you see these symbols pop up, then make sure you're not running your 60% crit chance build that you've just brought from the open world. Stop, drop some crit chance, and know that you're going to put out more damage. Thank your teammates later. I'm back to the research lab. Got some more work to do. If you like the content, then like it. If you want to see more of it, then subscribe. Otherwise, I'm going to see you in the next one. Fog out.